What would you do with the person you loved? The one you sacrificed everything for, betrayed you so deeply it made you question the very meaning of love itself. Would you forgive, or would you crumble under the weight of the ultimate betrayal? Imagine watching the person you've devoted your life to turn to you for help in their darkest hour. You give them a part of yourself, literally, and instead of gratitude, they repay you with abandonment. Does love demand sacrifice, or does it sometimes demand self-preservation? Before you answer, let me tell you the story of Denise Walker. Denise was a woman whose faith guided every decision she made, a devoted mother whose life revolved around her children, and a wife who believed in the sanctity of marriage no matter how heavy the burden became. To the outside world, Denise was a pillar of loyalty and kindness. But to Marcus Walker, her husband of nearly 2 decades, she was little more than a convenience, a woman to lean on when times were tough, but someone to discard when life offered him something better. Denise's story begins with love but quickly unravels into heartbreak, betrayal, and a choice that would split an entire community. A decision born not from rage, but from years of silent suffering. Marcus was the kind of man who always took without giving, charismatic yet selfish. He drew people in, including Denise, who saw potential in him even when others warned her the road he would lead her down. Through years of infidelity, drinking, and financial recklessness, Denise held on. Her faith told her love was patient, and forgiveness divine. But was it enough? This isn't just a story about a marriage collapsing. It's about sacrifice, betrayal, and the painful moral questions that come with both. It's about the limits of loyalty and the breaking point of the human spirit. As you listen, ask yourself, what would you have done in Denise's shoes? Could you forgive? Would you walk away? Or, like Denise, would you make a choice that changes everything? Stay with me as we unravel the life of Denise Walker, a devoted wife whose love and sacrifice seemed endless, and a husband, Marcus, whose actions left scars that could never heal. Their story will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and justice. Denise Walker grew up in the heart of rural Georgia, raised in a household built on unwavering Christian values. Her parents, Loretta and Charles, were devout churchgoers who instilled in her a deep sense of faith, loyalty, and a belief that love could conquer all. From a young age, Denise was taught that marriage was sacred, a covenant never to be broken, no matter the storm. She wasn't just shaped by her upbringing. She was a reflection of it. Her quiet demeanor and warm smile made her beloved in the community. She was a woman who baked extra pies for church fundraisers and stayed late to clean up after events without being asked. Yet beneath her selflessness, Denise carried insecurities rooted in childhood. She wasn't slender like the women on TV, or even some of her classmates. Her fuller figure made her a target for teasing, and those cruel words left scars she worked hard to hide. As she grew older, she learned to mask her self-doubt with kindness, pouring herself into helping others as a way to feel valued. By her mid-20s, Denise had become the caretaker of her family. Her younger siblings leaned on her for guidance, and her parents saw her as a pillar of strength. But deep down, Denise longed for something more, a love that affirmed her worth and made her feel seen. When she met Marcus Walker, it felt like her prayer had been answered. Marcus was the type of man who could command a room without effort. With his sharp wit and natural charm, he was used to getting whatever he wanted, often at the expense of others. Raised in Atlanta in a household obsessed with appearances, Marcus had learned early how to wear masks. To many, he was the golden boy, the life of the party. But beneath the surface lay selfishness, impulsiveness, and an unshakable need for validation. His youth had been riddled with poor decisions, dropping out of college, broken relationships, heavy drinking. By the time he met Denise, his reputation as a ladies' man was already well known. Still, Denise saw something others didn't. She believed he was worth saving, that with love and patience, he could become a man God intended him to be. Despite warnings from her friends and family, he's trouble, you deserve better. Denise chose him. They married in a small church ceremony, surrounded by loved ones. For Denise, it was a dream come true. For Marcus, it was a chance at a fresh start, or so she thought. The early years of their marriage were a mix of hope and heartache. Denise devoted herself to building their home, cooking meals, and supporting Marcus through his endless job changes and reckless decisions. She believed if she prayed hard enough, if she endured long enough, he would change. But the cracks showed quickly. His drinking worsened, his temper grew volatile, and his late nights became harder to ignore. "Why do you put up with him?" friends would ask. Her answer was always the same: "Because I love him." Love means staying, even when it's hard. Marcus's infidelity was an open secret, though Denise refused to acknowledge it aloud. She poured her energy into motherhood, raising their 2 children, Ayanna and Jeremiah, who became her world. For their sake, she endured his absences, his cruel remarks, and his betrayals. "Maybe if I lose weight, he'll love me again," Denise once whispered to a close friend. But no matter what she did, it was never enough. During a heated argument, Marcus spat the words that would haunt her. "You're good for nothing. You should be grateful I even stayed this long." Still, Denise stayed, anchored by her faith in her children. She clung to the hope that things would get better. But deep down, she knew she was holding on to a version of Marcus that had never truly existed. Her story was one of quiet endurance, a woman who gave everything to a man who gave nothing in return. She couldn't have imagined just how far she'd be pushed or how much she'd lose before her life reached its breaking point. Marcus's reckless lifestyle finally caught up to him. The man who once carried himself with arrogant confidence now struggled just to climb a flight of stairs. A doctor's visit confirmed what he dreaded most. His kidneys were failing, and without a transplant, time was running out. The news hit Marcus like a freight train. For a man who had spent his whole life taking what he wanted, the thought of depending on someone else for survival was unbearable. Bedridden and desperate, he watched the people who had once surrounded him during his prime vanish without a trace. The women who used to fawn over him, the so-called friends who enabled his reckless lifestyle, none of them were there now that he truly needed them. The mistresses who never missed a chance to laugh at him over drinks had disappeared, leaving him alone with the reality of his failing body. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus's arrogance gave way to a sobering truth. The only person left was Denise. For Denise, the news of Marcus's illness was both devastating and complicated. On one hand, she couldn't stand to see the father of her children, the man she had once loved so deeply, suffer. But on the other, she couldn't erase the memories of betrayal, the countless nights she had cried herself to sleep while he was out with other women. The voices around her were relentless. "Let him face the consequences of his actions," her sister Vanessa told her firmly. "He doesn't deserve your kindness, Denise, not after everything he's done." Her best friend, Monica, was even harsher. "Are you out of your mind? This man humiliated you, cheated on you, tore down your worth, and now he wants your kidney? Don't even think about it." Even Denise's pastor, a man she respected deeply, urged her to pray about it. He didn't outright forbid it, but his hesitation spoke louder than words. Denise's heart was torn in two. She wrestled with the weight of her decision, caught between the people telling her to protect herself and the faith that had always guided her. The Bible spoke of forgiveness, of selflessness, of love. But could she truly call herself a Christian if she turned her back on Marcus in his time of need? Every time she looked at Ayanna and Jeremiah, she felt the pull to say yes. They deserved to have their father alive, no matter how flawed he was. And despite everything, Denise couldn't deny that some part of her still loved him. That love was battered, but not extinguished. Yet it wasn't only love that pushed her toward the unthinkable. It was also her own integrity. If she let Marcus die, she knew she'd carry that guilt forever. The night Denise made her decision was one she would never forget. Sitting alone in the living room with her Bible open on her lap, her trembling hands flipped through the pages as she searched for clarity. She prayed softly, "Lord, give me the strength to do what you would have me do, not for him, but for you." The next morning, Denise told Marcus she would get tested to see if she was a match. His response stunned her. There was no heartfelt gratitude, no apology for years of betrayal, just a brief nod, as though her sacrifice was expected. "Thanks," he muttered, not even looking her in the eye. The testing process was grueling. Denise endured round after round of hospital visits, blood work, and questions that reminded her of the risk she was taking. She thought often of Ayanna and Jeremiah. Would she live to see them grow up? But when the results confirmed she was a match, her mind was already made up. She wasn't doing this for Marcus. She was doing it for peace within her own heart. On the morning of the surgery, Denise stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her fingers brushing across her stomach. Soon, a part of her would be gone forever, a part she was giving to a man who had already taken so much. As she was wheeled into the operating room, she closed her eyes and whispered, "Let this be enough, Lord. Let this bring me peace." The surgery was successful. Marcus's body accepted the kidney, and for a brief moment, Denise believed her sacrifice had been worth it. She lay in her hospital bed, weak and sore, while Marcus recovered with surprising speed. But even in her haze of pain, something gnawed at her. His visits were short, perfunctory, his gratitude hollow. There was no warmth in his eyes, no real appreciation. Deep down, Denise feared she already knew why. The weeks after surgery were filled with pain and cautious hope. Denise's body healed slowly, the scar on her abdomen a constant reminder of what she had given. But she carried a quiet pride, believing this act of love might finally be the turning point in their troubled marriage. Marcus, now regaining his strength, walked around the house with renewed energy, free from the weakness that once confined him. Denise cared for him through his recovery with the same devotion she always had, cooking his favorite meals, making sure he took his medications, staying up late when he couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would change. But the cracks appeared quickly. Marcus brushed off her attempts at real conversation, dismissing her when she tried to reflect on the gravity of what she had done for him. His phone calls became more frequent and more secretive. He stepped outside to talk, his voice hushed. When she asked who it was, his answers were vague. Just work stuff, he'd say. Soon, he began coming home late, offering flimsy excuses. The warmth she longed for grew colder with every passing day. Her friends and family saw it too. "Denise, don't ignore the signs this time," Monica warned her. "You deserve better." But Denise clung to denial. She had given this man her kidney. Surely that meant something. Surely he couldn't betray her again. Then, one quiet Tuesday morning, her world shattered. While sorting the mail, she found a plain white envelope with her name written in Marcus's handwriting. She opened it casually, expecting something ordinary. Instead, her eyes froze on the words. "I can't do this anymore, Denise. I need to move on with my life. And so, do you? I'm in love with someone else. I've already filed for divorce and made arrangements to leave the house. I hope we can keep this civil, for the kid's sake." The letter slipped from her hands. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. Denise steadied herself against the counter as the reality hit her. The man she had saved, the man she had given a part of her body to, was leaving her. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered through broken sobs. If this is how he felt, why not tell me face to face? Why not call me instead of hiding behind a letter? The pain came in crashing waves, each one sharper than the last. Denise collapsed to the floor, clutching the crumpled letter, as if holding tighter could make it vanish. Questions flooded her mind, each more devastating than the last. How could he do this to me? Was my love not enough? Where was she when I risked everything for him? Hours later, Ayanna and Jeremiah found their mother sitting on the kitchen floor, her cheeks stained with tears, still clutching the letter that had destroyed her world. Ayanna, now old enough to grasp the weight of what was happening, wrapped her arms around her mother, offering silent comfort. But no embrace could soothe the ache in Denise's heart. She spent days replaying Marcus's betrayal, struggling to make sense of it. Finally, she decided to confront him directly. "You can't end a marriage with a letter. We need to talk," she told him one evening when he came home, his demeanor calm, almost careless. "Why, Marcus?" Denise asked, her voice trembling, but steady enough to cut through the silence. "Why now? After everything I've done for you, everything I've given up, you're just walking away." Marcus sighed, his face betraying no hint of remorse. "Denise, it's over. It's been over. You just didn't want to see it." "Where was she?" Denise demanded, her voice rising with years of pent-up anger. Where was your mistress when you were dying, when you needed someone to save your life? I was there. I gave you a part of me, and this is how you repay me? Marcus's reply was cold and merciless. She didn't need to give me a kidney. She helped cover the surgery. She's the one I want to be with now. The air left Denise's lungs. This man, the father of her children, the man she had loved despite his flaws, had reduced her sacrifice to nothing more than a transaction. "You're unbelievable," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. "You took everything from me, my health, my trust, my love. For what? So you could start over with someone else." Marcus shrugged, his indifference cutting deeper than any words. "I'll leave the house to you. That's the least I can do." But it wasn't enough. Not for Denise. Not for the woman who had poured years into holding their family together, only to be cast aside when she was no longer useful. The weeks after Marcus left were a storm without end. Denise's days blurred into a haze of grief and disbelief. She had given him her body, her loyalty, her love, and he had discarded her like nothing. The scar across her abdomen reminded her daily of the price she had paid, only to be repaid with betrayal. Nights were the hardest. The bed felt enormous, the silence unbearable. She replayed their last confrontation over and over, dissecting his cruelty, his indifference. He hadn't cared about the years she fought to save their marriage. He hadn't cared that she risked her life to save his. Then came the invitation. One morning, Denise opened the mailbox and found an ornate envelope with Marcus's name on the return address. Confused, she tore it open, only to be met with the most painful blow yet, a wedding invitation. The letter was written in Marcus's casual tone, as if it were a formality. "Denise, I understand if you don't want to come, but I thought it was only fair to invite you. After all, we share a history. Best wishes, Marcus." Her hands trembled. The humiliation was unbearable. Not only had he moved on, he was flaunting it, as if her sacrifice meant nothing. Her friends were outraged. "Burn it," Monica urged. "He's not worth it." But Denise couldn't shake the weight of it. The thought of him celebrating while she was left to pick up the pieces was too much to bear. She debated for days, then finally called him. "Marcus, I need to see you. One last time." He resisted, but eventually agreed. "Fine. Come to the new place. You can see how things are for me now." Denise dressed in her best, rehearsing her words, her composure. But the moment she stepped into his sleek new apartment, her facade began to crack. Marcus greeted her with a smug smile, his confidence fully restored. "What do you think?" he asked, gesturing around the room. "It's nice," she replied, forcing a polite smile. He didn't stop there. He boasted about his new life, his fiancée, how everything was falling into place. "She didn't give me a kidney," he said with a laugh, "but she helped pay for the surgery. So in her own way, she saved my life." The words hit Denise like a blow to the chest. He spoke as if her sacrifice were nothing. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice breaking, "do you even realize what I've done for you? What I gave up?" He shrugged. "You did what you thought was right. I didn't ask you to." The breaking point came suddenly. All the pain, the humiliation, the years of suppressed anger erupted. She had endured, forgiven, carried more than any one person should. But now, standing before the man who had taken everything from her, she could no longer hold it in. Denise reached into her purse and pulled out a small handgun she had purchased in a desperate moment. Marcus's smugness faltered, fear flashing in his eyes. "Denise, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice unsteady. "You don't get to do this to me, Marcus," she said, her voice calm despite the tears streaming down her face. "You don't get to take everything and walk away as if it doesn't matter. Put the gun down. We can talk," he begged, hands raised. But there was nothing left to say. Denise pulled the trigger. The sound echoed to the apartment as Marcus collapsed, shock frozen on his face. For a moment she stood frozen, the reality sinking in. The gun slipped from her trembling hands as she fell to her knees beside him, sobbing. "What have I done?" she whispered, staring at the lifeless body of the man who had caused her so much pain. The echo of the gunshot had barely faded before the weight of her actions crushed her. Neighbors, startled by the sound, call the police. Within minutes, flashing lights filled the street. Denise didn't run. She didn't hide. When officers entered, they found her sitting on the floor beside Marcus's body, hands raised, tears streaming down her face. Marcus Walker's death sent shockwaves through the community. Local headlines screamed betrayal, revenge, tragedy. How could this happen? One neighbor said. She was always so kind, so devoted to her family. I never imagined something like this. The investigation began immediately, led by Detective Raymond Holt, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts and meticulous style. As the crime scene was processed, the pieces of the puzzle came together quickly. The handgun on the floor still carried Denise's fingerprints, and the wedding invitation resting on the kitchen counter provided a chilling backdrop. But it was Denise's own confession that left no doubt. At the station, she told Detective Holt everything. The years of betrayal, the humiliation of the divorce, and the final confrontation that spiraled into tragedy. Her voice was steady, almost resigned, as she recounted the events leading up to Marcus's death. It wasn't planned, she insisted softly. I couldn't take it anymore. The evidence painted a clear picture, but the story behind the crime was layered with complexity. As details of Denise's marriage surfaced, investigators began to see her not as a heartless killer, but as a woman broken down by years of emotional torment. Days later, Denise's trial began. Her defense was built on her suffering. Her attorney, Vanessa Caldwell, painted a portrait of a woman who had endured years of emotional abuse, betrayal, and humiliation at the hands of a man who took her love for granted. When Denise took the stand, her composure shattered. She broke down as she described the years of pain that led to that fateful day. I gave him everything, she cried, her voice trembling. My love, my loyalty, even my kidney. And still, he left me. Still, he humiliated me. The trial's most powerful moments came from the emotional testimonies of those closest to her. Her daughter, Ayanna, tearfully described the mother she had always admired. My mom has always been the strongest person I know. She held us together when my dad wasn't there. I know what she did was wrong, but I also know she's not a bad person. She's not a monster. Monica, Denise's best friend, recalled the countless nights Denise had cried over Marcus's betrayals. She forgave him time after time, even when none of us thought he deserved it. Denise didn't deserve the way he treated her, like she was nothing. Even the prosecutor, while demanding justice, acknowledged the case wasn't simple. This is not a straightforward crime, he admitted in closing arguments. It's the result of years of emotional abuse, betrayal, and heartbreak, but it is still a crime. The jury deliberated for days, torn by the weight of Denise's actions and the circumstances behind them. Public opinion was just as divided. Some saw her as a tragic figure, pushed beyond her limits by a man who wronged her at every turn. Others saw her as a criminal who had crossed a line that could never be justified. When the verdict was read, the courtroom fell silent. Denise was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5. The ruling sparked heated debate across the community. Had justice been served, or was her punishment too severe? As Denise was led away in handcuffs, she looked back at her children, her eyes wet with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered, barely audible. For Denise, the road ahead would be long and grueling. Yet, for the first time in years, she felt a strange sense of release. The burden of her pain, her anger, and her humiliation had finally been lifted, though at a devastating cost. Denise's story forces us to ask, was her act of violence justified or an irreversible mistake? How far should forgiveness stretch in the face of betrayal? Could you endure years of emotional torment, give a piece of yourself to save a life, only to be humiliated in the end? Do you see Denise as a victim pushed to her breaking point, or as someone consumed by pain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. After the trial, Denise began serving her sentence, using the time to reflect, seek redemption, and rebuild her faith. Her children, Ayanna and Jeremiah, stood by her, visiting often and advocating for her early release. Slowly, Denise began to find peace, even though the scars of her past never fully healed. What do you think about Denise's actions? Let's discuss the moral and ethical dilemmas in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore love, betrayal, and redemption. Stay tuned for the next story, one you won't forget. This is Ruthless Realities. Until next time.